Welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. Waiting for Instagram to come in. Hi, everybody. All right, welcome to Doing Life Together, episode 37. It is Sonia Eckel, your host, and I'm so excited for tonight. We're going to have so much fun. So, who's ready? Okay, put in the comments if you are on with me live, or if you're catching the replay, just put hashtag replay. I always love to connect with those of you who are on. It's always way more fun, right? All right, so welcome. Tonight, we are going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on lady hormones and intermittent fasting. So tonight is more for the ladies, but guys, hang around because I feel like this information could be super, super valuable for you. Now, you are going to want to use it with wisdom because we are talking about ladies and hormones. But I actually think that what I'm going to share tonight, and hopefully I do it justice because I am not a doctor. I am not an expert in this topic. I've just really tried to take what I think Mindy Pels is saying and put it in a visual for all of us visual people so that we can know how best to work with our body on fasting. So I just want to put out that disclaimer first before we dive in. But for all the men who have ladies in your life, I mean, we are cyclical beings, and it turns out it's very scientific. What I would not recommend is if your lady is being extremely emotional or not, whatever, that is not the time to go, honey, it's your hormones. Okay. So just don't do that piece. Be a little covert about it, but it will show you where you need a little extra loving, a little extra support. And so I think it's going to help you guys too. But really tonight, ladies, let's talk. Let's talk as if the guys aren't even in the room because this is going to be amazing. All right. So first of all, just a little bit about intermittent fasting. I mean, I think most everyone has some awareness under it. It's been in conversation a lot. Let me just make sure I'm still on. Yes, I am. And so why would a person intermittent fast, and what is exactly intermittent fasting? I remember I first found out about it maybe 6 years ago, and I did what I do. I started the deep dive on research because I really wanted to make sure I wasn't going to harm my body. And so the research back then, Dr. Jason Feng, I think it's Feng on YouTube, and I start deep diving all of, I hope I'm saying Dr. Feng's name right. I think that's right. Dr. Feng, it's Feng, F-U-N-G, not Feng, F-U-N-G, Dr. Jason Feng. And he is a nephrologist, and he's got tons of information out there on intermittent fasting. And so I began deep diving this concept, mainly because I was looking at the health benefits. And so why would you intermittent fast, and what is it? So just to get us all on the same playing field, intermittent fasting, we always fast. If you sleep, you fast, right? Unless you're like a nighttime sleep eater or something. But we all of us are going to have a fasting period when we're sleeping. America's culture is to, as soon as you're up, you're pouring a coffee with cream in it, or half and a half, or milk, or something that's breaking your fast in most cases. And so we break our fasting state, many of us in America, immediately as soon as we're up. And then oftentimes people are snacking right before bed. So literally that is your eating window, and then versus your fasting window. So when I began researching intermittent fasting, it looked like there was a lot of benefits if you could have an eating window of about 5 to 6 hours. I now know that's maybe a little intense, but anyway, so being Sonia, doing what I do, I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to I'm going to eat for 6 hours, and I'll just fast the rest of the time. And you got to know something about me. When I make a decision, I tend to pretty much follow through. That's typically. I have to be really committed to my decision though. So if I made it for someone else and I really didn't want to do it, that's a whole different story, okay? But this was a decision. So I jumped into the intermittent fasting lifestyle. Turns out I loved it. I loved it. I was happy as a clam because I didn't have to worry about breakfast. All my life, I'd been told that breakfast is necessary and so forth. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to make breakfast, and I could just break my fast usually at 1 p.m. I'd be breaking it, and then I would finish eating by 7. And that was that. And honestly, in past years of my life, there was a period I was literally run by food. I was constantly thinking about food. I loved looking at recipes because that meant food. I loved making brownies because that meant I got to eat the brownies. So I was very actually food focused. And at some point in my life, and I don't even remember when, um, it was like God lifted it from me where that I'm not as food driven anymore. I don't know what that's about, but it's probably over a decade ago. And I was super grateful because I would rather eat to live than live to eat. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love dessert and I still love eating out and I love amazing cooking. Okay. So I still love all those things. I still really enjoy those, but it just doesn't run my life at the same level as it once did. So intermittent fasting worked slick because it created all this time in my life, and that was kind of fun. However, I intermittent fasted probably for 3 years straight. And like I said, I'm kind of an all-in girl. Like I rarely broke my patterns on that fast. Maybe I would go 7, maybe 8 hours eating, but it wasn't like I was even trying to like not break it. It's just my personality style. When I make a decision, I'm very routine in sticking with that. And so then after those 3 years of loving intermittent fasting, some things started happening in my body. And it was like, okay, what domino just fell first? And I shared this in a much earlier episode, so you can hear all the goods. But basically, my progesterone went down. So that led to heavier bleeding. That's one of the downsides of low progesterone, and as well as some others, but that was one. Then my iron, because of the prolonged heavy bleeding, like I felt great, right? Like I still thought I was like amazing and felt really pretty good, except I was napping a lot more. But I went in and got my blood work and my ferritin levels were at a 2. So my iron stores were very low. The doctor literally was like, how did you walk in last week and tell me you're doing great? Because nobody walks in my office saying they're doing great with ferritin levels of a 2. And I was like, well, the good thing is I live a pretty healthy life. And then my thyroid also started to tip. So I think that's our body in a nutshell. It's a bunch of dominoes, right? So we want to take good care of it. At which point, my hubby Willie started researching. He's like, you know what? I don't think intermittent fasting is serving you well. And so I then committed to going off it because obviously I don't want to not be well either. And he just was supporting me in that. And actually went to a carnivore diet for 8 months. Again, I spoke about that in a previous thing. I actually loved the carnivore diet too. It was so easy. And I'm a ribeye girl. And I mean, just that was great. And my health seemed to do well on it. So that was good. Yes, dream about food. I used to have food dreams as well. And yeah, it's so beautiful when you can flip that and you're literally eating to live and support your body instead of living for the next meal, so that's good. Good point there. So then a friend told me about Mindy Pelz's book, Fast Like a Girl. And that's when I came on and I shared with y'all. I was like, oh my goodness. Every girl, every teenager and up needs to read this book. It's so incredibly powerful. So what I was doing is I was fasting like a man. I'm not saying guys, you should fast like I did either. I think a little more alternating is probably good on the intermittent fasting wagon, but I was not fasting like a woman needs to fast. So I am going to share with you. Now, I'm very visual. So I read Dr. Mindy's book, and I'm like, okay, I got to put this in a visual so my brain can hopefully see it. So I figure I can't be the only person who's a little bit visual about things. So all y'all on Instagram, I can't share my screen with you. So, and I don't think Instagram lets me post photos. I just thought of this just now. So anyway, well, you can catch the full episode on YouTube, or all of my replays of the series are at Doing Life together.live, and the podcast is Doing Life Together at LIFE. So you can always find past episodes there. But what we're going to do, I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, first of all, though, before we do this, I just want to walk you through a few of the perks of intermittent fasting and why you might want to consider it. It is really quite phenomenal, but you just want to be smart about it, especially ladies. We want to be smart about it. So autophagy is where your body goes and eats up the cells that are damaged, they need to go. And so autophagy is a powerful thing that God made our bodies to do, but it turns out that this happens in the fasted state. So when we are constantly in a very long eating window, it doesn't allow time to clean out the garbage. So enhanced autophagy, we'll say, and this really helps that cellular level repair, rejuvenation, cellular level health. Okay, and this is a biggie, improved insulin sensitivity. We know that type 2 diabetes is a huge reality, and Dr. Jason Fung, that was kind of his breakthrough, is he found that if he could teach people who are either borderline diabetes or had diabetes to just intermittent fast, it changed their numbers dramatically, even if they didn't eat all that great during the eating window. And so you can, again, follow him for all the things. It's been a hot second since I've watched his stuff. Another thing is fat loss and weight loss. So what I was taught is this is not necessarily a calorie restriction diet. Like during that eating window, you eat quite a lot. And I ate a lot, but even eating a lot, I did lose weight naturally. So it may or may not work for everyone. And I think ladies, we have to be careful, because if we're not fasting like a girl, as Mindy Pals talks about, then we are undermining, our cortisol levels are going up, and that makes us gain weight. So I think sometimes when we don't do intermittent fasting well, we could actually have the reverse effects. We don't want that. Reduced inflammation. We know so many diseases are being tracked to inflammation in the body. So that's a huge win. Enhanced brain function. I mean, that's another huge win. And of course, these are all things they think are tied. I'm not making any medical claims. I'm actually just reading a list from online. But increasing the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports neuron growth and protects against neurodegenerative diseases. So that's pretty awesome. Increased growth hormone secretion and human growth hormone, HGH, when our body produces that on its own, that can be super powerful for maintaining muscles and fat loss and just overall how your body composition is. So that's huge. Also, a link to heart health is what I'm seeing online. I don't know. Someone was saying that long-term studies, they weren't sure about that one. So anyway, so improved. Some people say it can help your microbiome and your immune system. Anyway, so do your own research. This, remember, we're just doing life together. I'm literally like, we're sitting at the table and just chatting through some stuff, and it's just bringing topics to the table. So, okay, how long should we fast? And thank you, Jackie, for that question, because that's where we're going. So when I first started researching, and they said a 5 to 6 hour window of eating was like the golden sauce on autophagy and all these things, I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing a 6 hour eating window. But what I've learned is that was not smart for me with hormones, and it actually did cause some problems. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Okay. So I actually think now, knowing what I know now, is alternating your fasting periods is better, because then your body doesn't just get used to one way and it just adjusts. And it's always, you're keeping your body on its toes a little bit. All right, now I'm going to share a visual graphic for those of you on YouTube and Facebook. And so this is based on a 28-day cycle. I actually did this. So if it's like got errors, please, again, do your research. So I hope I got this right. But the day one of your menstrual cycle is the first day of your bleeding period. So if you are one of those people who spot beforehand, that's not, it's the first like bleeding day of your period is day one of a typical 28-day cycle. Yes. Okay. I love that. Hi, Aunt Joyce. Good to see you. So 40 pounds lost by following a 6-hour fasting window, but then switching it up. So yeah, I mean, when you go and research intermittent fasting, you'll be blown away on the weight loss front. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So menstruation, everyone's different, but this is just kind of an average, maybe six days. And during that, I believe Dr. Mindy says 12 to 15 hours of fasting. So the way you figure out your eating window is pretty simple. 24 hours minus 12, that means your eating window is 12 hours and your fasting window would be 12 hours as well. Okay, that's pretty doable. Let's say you break the fast at, I think it's better to break your fast earlier and end your eating window earlier in the day versus like breaking your fast at 10 a.m. and then ending your window at 10 p.m. Because from what I've seen, it's not super healthy to eat that close to bedtime anyway. It affects your sleep quality, which is a whole nother podcast. But so I think, let's say if you broke during that period, she's saying 12 to 15 hours of fasting. So maybe 10 or 9, let's just say 9 hours of eating. Let's say you broke your fast at 9 a.m. and then you ended your eating around like 7 or 6, okay? And then we move into the follicular phase, and midway through your cycle is that ovulation point. So from what I get from Dr. Mindy is this period right there is, I believe it's your high estrogen period. And this is when you feel like Superwoman. This is when you say yes to everything that comes your way because you absolutely know you've got it. This is when you go to the gym and you're lifting and you're like, oh, I am like, today is easy. Very often you're going to be in that part of your cycle. So if you're taking on a big project, this would be the part of the cycle. So end of period to midpoint of your cycle when you start ovulation, that's your power time. And also, if you want to do an intense fast, like maybe you research a 3-day fast or, whatever, this, ladies, would be our window to do a fast, okay? And so it's so tiny on my screen here. I'm like, but I tried to take that. I think she recommends 16 to 18 hours of fasting. So a little bit more of an aggressive fasting period there. Then we hit ovulation. Then we have the next like 7 days or so where I think it's your estrogen is dropping and your progesterone is ramping up, if I'm not mistaken. So still you can moderately fast then, but the key we need to know, this is like so important to me because I learned from experience, is like that week to 10 days before your period starts. That I believe is where your progesterone is peaking. And here's what I also learned about progesterone is if you want to eat up your progesterone and not have any, which is not a particularly good plan. Now, if you're through menopause, this is talking more premenopausal, okay, not postmenopausal. But Mindy says you can actually, even if you're postmenopausal, you can kind of put yourself in a very similar cycle. But she also has specialized books for menopause. So you guys, if that applies to you, you can do the deep dive there. But when you are stressed, it downs your progesterone, which fasting is a stressor. Okay. So even though it's got a lot of perks, it's still going to stress your body. And also cortisol, we're learning so much about cortisol. And when cortisol levels are through the roof, you're going to be carrying more around your midsection, and cortisol is triggered by stress. I haven't looked at the connection if she talked about it in the book because it's been a minute since I read her book. But I would imagine that when you try to push through hard during this progesterone phase, that your body's going to kick up the cortisol to try to get you through all those stressors. So this is the time to go to the spa. This is not the time to have a fight with hubby, okay? This is just gentle time, like self-care time. If you sleep a little longer during this part of the cycle, your body needs it. It needs to be really lovingly cared for in this part. This is not your Superwoman season of the cycle. This is the self-care, the gentle, be gentle to yourself, and not the time for intense fasting. So she says fast, I think, at no more than 12 hours during this time. I also learned, and I don't think this was Dr. Mindy Pelz, but I also learned that progesterone during that phase, it's normal to need a little bit more carbs. Not bad carbs, be smart with your carbs, but like this might be a time where if you are like, why am I craving carbs? Your body actually might need it to make all the hormones that it needs. So anyway, if that is helpful, I wish I could share on Instagram the graphic. And yeah, anyway, that's that. Okay, let me take that one down. And again, I do not claim perfection on that graphic. That was really for my own good to see it in a visual. And then I thought, I can't be the only one who wants to see it in a visual like this. And so anyway, there's probably a much more scientific one out there. But was that helpful to understand intermittent fasting, the perks, and also how it works with premenopausal women's hormones? But imagine all that hormonal info I just gave you. If you have a teenage daughter, like how awesome would it have been when I was a teenager to understand why sometimes I was more emotional and what season of my life that was, and so forth and so on. Actually, there is still an intermittent fasting plan. Just go and follow Dr. Mindy Pelz. It's Pelz, and Mindy, Mindy. And I'm pretty sure that when I read her book, she was saying that she was going more into helping menopausal or postmenopausal women as well. So yeah, our hormones are shifting. So, okay. Good. I'm glad that was helpful. All right, so moving along, that's my 2 cents, intermittent fasting and hormones. And feel free to share this with a friend, share this with maybe a young lady in your life who this might be super beneficial for her to know sooner than later and not have to wait till my age to figure that little piece out. Because especially as teenage girls, we sometimes do the craziest things to our bodies to try to fit the social idea of what a girl's supposed to look like. And I think if we can teach our young ladies how to work with their body and eat healthy, like they would actually just attain what, not like the Photoshop version, but just a healthier body all the way around. So, okay, awesome. Now we have a little bit more time. Okay. So I also want to talk about, as long as I'm talking to the ladies tonight, something else that's been on my mind, and it just popped up today. So I wasn't going to talk about this tonight, but this came up and I thought, I need to share this. So let's talk mom guilt for a second. Whether you're a working mom or you're an at-home mom, I think women in general, and I'm not saying guys don't have it either. I'm not a man, so I can't speak to that. But I know I've worked with, thousands of women at this point, and most of us have, and even if you're not a mother, you've got woman guilt, and I am, I'm very pro men, right? This is just saying that our culture has set women up in an interesting way. So I think that for me, I just want to share my story and you can take whatever from it. But when I was young, I love both my parents dearly. And if you've read my book, you already know this about me. When I was growing up, one of the biggest argument triggers in their marriage from me looking on, and of course I only saw what I saw looking on, but was money. It was money guilt and money shaming and money stuff. And growing up on a farm, here's my perception now looking back. I don't know if I've got it quite right, but I do think farming, like owning your own business in many ways, you can have really good years where finances go pretty well, and then you can have some years where it doesn't go as well. And so what I think my being remembers about 18 years being raised at home are the bad years. I don't think this was an ongoing thing necessarily. I think there were seasons when it was more intensified. But we all know that bad memories seem to kind of sink and hold on a little bit stronger. And as a little girl, I always had this fear that my parents would get divorced. So every time I would hear them arguing, I would think, oh my goodness, are they going to get divorced? And, whatever, because, you have friends at school and their mom and dad are. And so, tell me I'm not alone with this. Okay. Now, this is the little girl's vision side of things. So I'm not saying it was accurate, but it was real, right? So I would listen to them arguing about money. And some of you have, and I found it very disrespectful to my mom. And I love you, Dad, if you're watching. But as a little girl, and I watched my mom under pressure for having spent too much. And this is nothing against my father, because financial stress is financial stress. But it's something we had to talk about, because doing life together, we're talking about the tough stuff. We're not just talking about the fun stuff. And so I felt like that was disrespectful. And so every time I would hear my parents argue, I kind of made a little vow as a little girl. My husband's never going to disrespect me. Like, it was just this vow. I remember making it. It took me years to remember it. I challenge you guys to look back on your life and say, what vow did you make in your youth? Any vows you made, you might want to revisit them. Because if you've never cleared those or annulled those or whatever, vows are very powerful, even if they were just a little girl or a little boy sitting in the room making it. So that's a side note bonus for y'all. Look back and see the vows you made to your little girl or your little boy self. It's very powerful to find those, and you don't have to live with them anymore. You don't have to stand by them anymore. So yeah, bonus material there. All right. So I found that I associated money with arguments more than good things. And so God had to really work on me to reset my whole money mindset. And then he asked me to write a book about it. So go to Amazon, Walking in His Promises, or you can go to transformedlivingtoday.com. And there's my free book offering. You just cover shipping and we will send you the book. So that's pretty awesome. transformedlivingtoday.com, I believe will take you there. So I had some money stuff. And then when Willie and I got married, and of course, I had this very idealistic idea of marriage. Well, I'd made a little vow that I was going to find the perfect man. So, Willie, poor guy, he was kind of set up for failure there. I mean, maybe some of you can relate. But anyway, I did realize much into our marriage that when I was reacting to him, it actually was rooted in that little vow that I made as a little girl. And so if anything even smelled slightly of disrespect, I was triggered because it was going against a vow I had made to myself. So interesting. But, and then in our marriage, and I adore Willie, he is amazing, and I'm so beyond blessed. But I will not sugarcoat it and say that it's only been smooth sailing. Like any other married couple, we've had disagreements, and it turns out some of the bigger ones, have been tied to finances. And I don't know if it's birth order. I'm a middle child. I love peace and harmony. Like, that's my favorite space to live. In fact, I will avoid if I can't live in that space. Like we go into avoidance. I'm sure some of you can relate. But so I don't like fighting. And I have grown a lot actually in differentiating feedback, which is extremely valuable, from fighting. So knowing that it's okay to receive feedback and that it doesn't have to be received as criticism. Because I'll be honest, my filters, I received all feedback as criticism. It was all triggering my not good enough rackets that were going on inside my heart. I'm not enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not all the things enough. And so any sort of feedback, even if it was accurate feedback, was triggering my not good enough stuff. Which wasn't about the person giving me feedback, by the way. That was about some work that I needed to do. I needed to unpack. So we argued about finances. And one of the things, I like nice stuff. I do. He's like, he says he could live in a shack in Minnesota and be just happy as a clam. And I think he's right. I like a beautiful house. I like the ranch. I like the dream life that God has allowed us a vehicle to build. So one of the motivations for me after becoming an at-home mom, giving up my full-time physical therapy income, was what can I do to eliminate this stress? I hate financial stress. I hate it. I still hate it. I've done a lot of work. I still hate financial stress. Give me a comment. What is financial stress to you? Like really, really, really tell me, what is it to you? I absolutely hate it. I really do. So anyway, one of my motivations then is I started praying and saying, God, I really feel like I'm called to be home with my babies and be an at-home mom, but I feel guilty every time I spend money because I wasn't contributing financially. I was contributing as a mama. I was loving and caring and supporting those babies, and I was doing really good, and I was advocating for them. And I'm so proud of young Sonia because she actually rocked it in a lot of ways. But she was insecure because she didn't feel like she was contributing, and she felt like a stressor was finances. So I was praying back then, saying, God, I need, show me. And then Norwex came into my life. And I knew it was the answer to my prayer. I think there's times what you've been saying silently in prayer, what you've been silently praying, often no one else knows it. But when the answer comes, I hope you recognize it. And sometimes fear of doing something wrong is what keeps us from recognizing the miracle that we were just handed, the open door we were just given. But because we're still so stuck in perfectionism and what if it's the wrong decision and what if I fail, we just don't walk through the door and we miss the answer to our prayer. And so I am beyond grateful that I walked through that door. I did it scared and it changed my life, but also in many ways at a personal level, it brought back my confidence because I was able to begin contributing financially and honestly began paying for something that was important to me, but wasn't necessarily important to Willie. And that's okay. Like, you and your spouse are not going to think exactly the same about things. So, yes, amen. Okay, well, I just believe God gives us answers. He is a good, good Father. And when we come to him in prayer, he is powerful to move. So if you have been praying, I know he's going to answer that. I know it. I just know it. So, all right. Always argued about money. I know that my kids were affected. And that is also something as parents that we have guilt about when we pattern something and we think, is this going to generationally just keep getting passed along? Because unless there's an intention, most generational things do kind of get passed along. So, yeah. And Stephanie, it's interesting what you're saying. It's very common that for many of you ladies, you head up the finances. And so you are the ones at the end of the month going, it's just not working. Like, we don't have enough money at the end of the month. This is a problem. So whichever spouse has maybe taken on more of that responsibility, it's hard because I think that spouse looks like the bad guy, right? And that was Willie for us. And I'm so grateful. He, has headed that up because it allows me to stay in my creative brain and my visionary brain, which has been my gifting. So yeah. You get kind of creative when you don't have enough money at the end of the month, don't you? You start robbing Peter to pay Paul. Exactly. When you work so hard and you feel like you don't move forward, and sometimes you feel like you're just barely staying afloat, that's financial stress. Thanks for sharing, Sarah. That's good. Yeah, you know what? God is so faithful. He does. And even in the times of financial stress, we were never without clothes. We were never without food. Some people are, but I mean, he's very faithful. And I know my parents were praying over us and praying over all the things. But I can't tell you, like, how many times did God open a door that somebody doesn't walk through out of fear, out of the voices, out of fear of causing, whatever. And that was the answer to the prayer, right? Like, God does not typically, to my experience, drop money out of heaven and be like, hey, honey, here you go. I heard your prayer. He typically opens a door, brings someone into our life, gives us a mentor, gives us a coach, something like that. And that's, that is the door to the prayer answer. but it requires action on our part. It really does. I am firmly a believer that it is not biblical that we sit on the couch and expect our prayers to be answered. Like, I think God answers prayers through assignments he gives us, open doors he gives us to walk through and take action. Yeah. And so I do think so too. And Stephanie's saying, I think it's very important for women to understand where they're at in their finances. And you know what? In our direct sales success formula series, one of our fabulous speakers spoke to that, especially for women who maybe had no awareness about finances and then something happened to their spouse. It's a very helpless feeling. So I think both partners should be very tuned into the finances. I completely agree both ways. Yeah, that's true too. That is true too. All right. Well, so I just want to invite you to a few things tonight. I want to invite you to go back in your childhood and see if you made some vows. Just ask, if you're not sure how to find them, just ask God. Say, did I vow anything when I was little that I need to become aware of again? And it's amazing. He'll bring it up. He'll bring it up. He's so good. And then when he brought it up and I was able to come and look at it and go, well, I don't need to live with that vow. God is now my protector. God is like, I don't view the world the way I did as a little girl sitting in my bedroom worried my parents would be divorced because they were fighting over money, right? So then I was able to annul it with God. And I just said, I want to annul this vow. I won't, and so anyway. Yeah. So you should definitely take very good notes if you are in Stephanie's situation where Stephanie does everything finances. She pays every bill, every piece. What my friend Suzanne, I believe, told me many, many years ago is then the person who does do the finances should have like a paper trail of writing saying where things can be found and things, so that if something happens to the other spouse, they could bring it to a financial expert and that person could follow the trail. So it's maybe not ideal, but it would work. So, all right. So I want to invite you to look at those. Okay. So I told you last week, I asked if it would be helpful that I would do a vision workshop. I truly believe when we see the vision, it helps us move out of our current situation and it helps us see the open doors. It helps us move through them. It gives us courage. Vision is so important to me. And biblically speaking, God says it's important as well. And so I am going to be doing a vision workshop. And I invite you in to this workshop. This has made all the difference for me. And when I have coached with people, this has always been something they're like, oh my goodness, Sonia, you're so visionary. You just see vision. But my goal is to help other people see their vision, right? So I don't want to just see the vision for them. I want them to see the vision. So why don't we do this? My fabulous assistant, I'd asked her, I think let's have everyone do workshop. Just come. Oh, nope, don't. 235. Number 235 in the comments. And we are going to get you the registration for the vision workshop. I believe it's game changing. It's so fun. I've been working on it and I'm so excited to share it with you guys and just to help you take your life to the next level. Because when I watch people living in pain and anxiety and fear, did I mention fear? There's so much fear that grips people. And when we're in fear, fear is not of God. 365 times in the Bible, fear not. Do not be anxious. It is so clear. So, how do we move out of a life like that of fear and anxiety and depression and isolation and desperation and all of those emotions? And I've felt them before. I don't ever want to live there. I'll be honest, I still have days where I'm like, oh, they're not as often, thankfully, they're pretty rare. But you hit a day, but the difference is you recognize it and you go, not today. Not today. I live as a daughter of the Most High King. No, I'm not buying into your fear. I'm not buying into desperation and anxiety and all of those things. Yes. And what you would do with vows that you still look at and you're like, I actually still really like that vow. and pray through it. And maybe you amend it. Maybe you rewrite it in even a bigger way, like even a more, so it's not just that I won't get divorced. I vow to never get divorced, because maybe you were hurt by divorce or whatever. Thank you for sharing your story, Stephanie. Appreciate that. Maybe you can go into prayer with God and say, can I rewrite it and say, I commit to an amazing marriage? And you flip it, because not getting divorced is one thing, but if it means you're living a miserable, argumentative, just whatever life, I believe you can actually change that. But the only way you can change it is you start changing. When you shift you and you do the inner work, honestly, how your spouse responds to you will change. So that's a good start, even if they don't directly change. You changing will start changing them. But I'm also not a fan of abuse in any form. So sometimes if you made a vow like that and you are in an abusive relationship, you got to take that to the Lord. And I don't think God wants you in under abuse either. So yeah. Vows are a very interesting thing. Oh, yeah. So you made it through the tough years, but now you have a wonderful marriage. What a blessing. What a blessing. I'm in fear this season. Okay. All right, my friend. I am calling you up and out of fear right now. I invite you to command the fear to go now in Jesus' name. You have authority, and then you can step into your next level calling and get on my vision workshop. Okay. Get there, because that's the first thing, is we need to reset with your vision. And some of you have never even given time to think what a vision is, or if you have one. You've never gotten off the hamster wheel of life and paying bills and working the 9 to 5 to ever even give space to what is vision. Get on my workshop. It's going to be Thursday night, 8 p.m., June 13th. And 2:35. I see you guys putting that in the comments. Just put 2:35, and hopefully, if we got the tech all set up, you'll get the information. I'm doing $27 just because I feel like when we invest in something, it actually makes us take it so much more seriously. I've done 2 free master classes, and I'm like, I was going to do this one free, and then a friend reached out, and she's like, actually, I think you should charge, and I was like, okay. I think I have always said, when you have just a little money in the game, you have a little more skin in the game, and you're going to be more committed to what you receive from it. And so that's that. And I just know it will be a huge blessing. All right. Thanks, friends. I have a Zoom to pop on, but it was so good to connect. And I pray that there has been some super helpful info today. Share your top takeaways. And I always love when you share if it was a blessing to you. So thank you, my friends. I'll see you June 13th, 2:35. Type it in the comments, 2:35, and then you'll get the info. And I promise you, I feel like this is such a game changer when you get your vision lined up. And so mom's guilt, it's time to say no to mom's guilt. Some working moms have guilt because they're working too much. Stay-at-home moms have guilt because they're not making any money. And they get a little touched up by the end of the day. It's time to be done. Just be loving. Pour into your children. When you're living in mom guilt, you're actually passing along that mom guilt generationally and that parent guilt. So it's time to break the generational junk that maybe we were handed. It's time to be done. So, okay. Have a great night, everyone. And we will see you on June 13th. And we'll see you next week on Wednesday. Bye. Oops. We're going to try that one again.